gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit, hosted by your very own Shane Hinton. And I am back with a vengeance. And also with me is the lovely Jules. Say hello, Jules.
Hiya.
Oh, thanks. Brilliant.
Oh, so all right. Sorry. Hiya, Shane.
Thank you. And also, silently in the background, looking lovely and pretty, is the lovely Alex Whiteley.
Hi. Hi there.
And also with us today, we have a very special guest, Sal Tonge. Will say hello.
Hi, hello.
See, I really built myself up for this massive intro, and then you all just let me down. It's just unbelievable.
Oh.
So before we go any further, Al's told me to do some shout outs. So let me fetch them up right now. First shout out is to be support shrewsbury.co.uk. What was that for, Al?
Support Shrewsbury it's run by, it's put together by Original Shrewsbury and a lot of other people around the town as well to support independent businesses. You buy vouchers and you can support your local businesses by going onto that website.
Cool.
There you go. Thank you very much, Al. Also, Annie House, she was a guest on the last episode. I've yet to listen to that yet, so sorry, boss.
You won't need to. We only recorded it at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm let off the then. Brilliant.
I was being time conscious. I was kind of like, yeah, this will go out after. Yeah, thank you, Annie, for coming on the show. It was great.
And he also told me to do a shout out.
No,
because apparently.
No, I was joking. That was banter. Don't say that.
But yeah, what we're actually here today to do is to talk to Sal about what she does. But I also believe that that Jules has a little bit of history with Sal.
Well, I know Sal. Of history, but Sal and I used to be sort of neighbours, all give it probably about a mile apart. But we used to be neighbours, and Sal does a whole variety of things. But I think what we'll do is we'll go straight over to Sal. Sal, to tell us a little bit about yourself, and particularly, obviously, the main purpose why we've got you on the show this evening, linked to your storytelling and what you do and what you're currently doing, certainly, obviously, given the current climate with regards to that.
Right. Well, thanks for inviting me along, all of you. My name is Sal Tonge, and I live in the village of Stiperstones. And I'm a mum and I'm a grandma and I'm a fitness instructor. But my main source of income is as a storyteller. And I've done this job for about 30 years as a professional teller of tales, Twoddle Monger, trader of taradiddles, and I often call myself a collector of oral bric-a-brac.
Oh my God.
And before the middle of March, I was an incredibly busy community artist. And I would work in schools. I worked a lot with people with special needs, adults and children living with multiple profound disabilities and autism. And I work a lot with people with memory impairment. And I do a lot of work, as I say, in schools, festivals, libraries. And I do a lot of staff training as well, training people and reminding people of the value of telling traditional tales.
So you said that's what you did sort of like March before obviously everything happened. So what is it you're doing specifically now and how you're making that work?
Well, it's been really, really challenging and it's been super bewildering because when I'm telling stories, you're very much kind of vibing with your audience. You go into a space. It might be a community centre. It might be a church hall. It might be a hospital ward. It might be a small classroom. It might be a library. It might be a stage. But whatever you do, You go into a space and you vibe with your audience and you check out how everybody is. Who's falling asleep? Who's looking a little bit sort of like they need shocking? Who's looking a little bit disengaged? Who's looking super engaged? Who looks like, they're ready for a scary story? Who's enjoying the horror in this? And you're vibing out your audience the whole time as a storyteller. And so when the lockdown happened, my work migrated to the screen, just like we're conferencing now. And it's been a huge challenge to vibe out your audience on a flat screen. I work with people with like really amazing kind of abilities. And, one man that I work with is blind and is nonverbal, but he loves stories. And so to work with him on a screen rather than in person, where I would bring kind of sensory additions to the story. So I might tell him a story, and if it was a story that was set somewhere cold, I might bring some ice and we might explore the ice, or I might bring a fan to suggest the wind when I'm telling that part of the story. And so to work on a flat screen was really bewildering. And then also what happened is that the carer set the screen up for this man. And so I needed to see his face to kind of see what his responses were. But then the sunlight sort of changed in the room, and all of a sudden his face went into shadow, and I just couldn't read even if he was awake, So it's kind of, it's been a challenge, and I've been working really, really hard to kind of adapt.
So a lot of what you do then is a lot of sort of like you said, reading people and whatnot. And I kind of get that because like with my job, I have to do a lot of I deal with I manage personnel and stuff, and a lot of that is over the phone because a lot of the people I deal with is mobiles. I have to do that literally all over the phone. I have to kind of gauge their mood, their temperament, and try and sort of deal with them at arm's length, and that's quite difficult sometimes. So obviously you're reading people face to face, and I assume then you'll be kind of adapting your way of telling the story basically on the fly to kind of engage everybody on like a fluid level.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, my training was in performance, and I did a degree in drama. And one of the things that I really learned all those years ago, back in the good old days of student grants and fabulous accessible education, one of the things that I did learn on my degree was I didn't want to perform in plays. I didn't want to, although I do bits of acting, I didn't want that to be my staple. I didn't want to learn a script and then do the same words night after night after night after night after night. And there's a discipline to it, and I do it, and I do enjoy it, and it's very invigorating for the mind, and it's sort of very it is enlivening in its way. But what I really wanted was to sort of have that kind of sort of an engagement with an audience, a little bit like a jazz musician. So you learn your repertoire, you learn your scales, you learn your chords. In my case, you learn your stories, and then you begin to riff and you begin to sort of like improvise with your audience. And as I say, if they like in the gory bits, well, you add a little bit more gore. And if they're sort of starting to go, woo, then you sort of gloss over the bit where the giant gets his leg chopped off, and you sort of segue neatly to Bluebells, where the princess sort of rubs him with healing balms and all is well. And it's kind of like, so you're always sort of dancing with your audience. It's very, very, it's very live. And then, to work with people who also have kind of complex needs, and people with autism and people with memory impairments, you're dancing even more. You know what I mean? You're really, really on your tippy toes, and that's the energy. That's kind of the buzz.
So how are you dealing with that at the moment, then, Sal?
I'm still learning, Jules. I mean, it's been a really bewildering time, and what I think I've used that word twice actually in this podcast now. Bewilderment just seems to be my complete state. And, I'd never Zoomed until April. April was my first Zoom. I sort of spent the rest of March in shock. And then I sort of began to emerge into the world of Zoom and FaceTime and Skype. And I am learning on these formats. And so, I have managed to do some one-to-ones with some of my particularly kind of harder to reach audiences. I've also, this morning I did a sing around for people living with dementia on a psychiatric ward in Stafford. And so they kind of put me on the big screen, and I was booked, and like lang, I sort of turn up with my guitar, because I also believe that, at the start I was saying I'm a collector of oral bric-a-brac, and there's an incredible amount of stories in pop songs, and I'm a real fan of, you only have to sing We're All Going on a Summer Holiday, and like people will start telling you stories. Where's the best place to go on holiday? You might not be able to remember what you had for breakfast. You might not even recognize your family members. These are very distressing parts of dementia. But, somebody might mention Llandudno to you, and ping, sticks of rock, donkeys, Punch and Judy, little fragments of memories will come. And a song like Cliff Richard's Summer Holiday will just sort of ease people into that kind of flow state. So I'm using screens, and also I've started an initiative for Redwoods Hospital in Shrewsbury, where I do a lot of work with people with dementia and Alzheimer's who are still out in the community. A lot of singing for the brain work, which is very sort of storyful for me. And I've begun doing Ring and Sing. So that's a Wednesday afternoon, and for people who don't have internet connection, or for whom the screen doesn't work, it's just a bit weird kind of singing with the telly. You watch the telly, you know what I mean? So it's it can be confusing for some people. So I have a contract, and I have about 7 or 8 people, and I ring them up, and I'm singing Sal on the phone, and we ring and sing. And they just tell me what they want to sing, and I got the guitar. And last time I did it, I had a drummer, a fabulous drummer who sort of accompanied me. I was on the guitar, and he was on the drum, and his daughter was holding the phone and singing along. And I had another guy who knows loads and loads of songs, and he was teaching me some really great sort of spooky songs that he used to sing with children when he was a teacher. And then I also had a great guy who sang me a beautiful love song, and then told me about the time when Norman Wisdom brought his car to his garage in Oswestry to get it fixed. So, it's stories and songs and memories, and it's just this lovely day, all down a telephone line.
So this is just obviously their sort of like, the purpose and the idea of that then is to keep them connected with somebody, keep them connected with a form of memory that they can remember, and in a happy, nice format, sort of elevating whatever type of memory they can take or recall from that sort of experience.
I think that creative artists working with like a huge repertoire, that we carry in our heads, and we sort of like move from idea to idea, kind of like making a unique patchwork quilt every time you have an encounter with somebody. Somebody can sort of come along and replace the pressure to remember with permission to play. And so you just come along, and whatever that person offers you, you go, yeah, and I know a song just like that. Or, yeah, you sing it again and I'll play it along with you. Or, yeah, that reminds me of a time when that happened for me. And, that person has no longer, the worst thing you can do with somebody with dementia is say, look, I'm going to show you these pictures. You remember the time when we used to go have our caravan down there? You remember going there? And the person's there going, no, I don't remember that anymore. I don't remember it. And we all know what happens when you're frightened. If somebody said to you, you remember that and you don't, you go into fight or flight, don't you?
Yeah.
And what happens is that all the blood in your body literally goes to your core, goes to your heart, your liver, your core. And where doesn't it go? It doesn't go to your brain. It leaves your brain because it goes to protect your major organs, because you're panicked and you're shocked. And if you're living with memory impairment, the last thing you want is any shock impulse that's going to starve your brain of blood, which starves it of oxygen. And so the idea behind the work that I offer is that we give that person permission to offer any idea that they want. You accept it and you build and you grow on it. And then that person feels accepted and they start to flow and they stop panicking. There's no pressure to remember something. There's no pressure to get it right or get it wrong, because somebody like me will always say, yeah, and we can do that. Yeah. And what about that? Yeah, yeah. And you're the yeah person.
I had a situation the other day where I was trying to remember a YouTube video about somebody that'd been on my other show, and it was a story about Burt Reynolds. But like when I went to say it, I completely forgot the actor's name on the spot. But the more I tried to remember Burt Reynolds' name, the more I couldn't find it. And it's always a situation when you try to remember the name of a song or a singer or something like that. The more you try and find it, the harder it is to remember, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you sort of
I do that on my kids' birthdays.
But that pressure is awful. And the more you sort of punish yourself, then you set up some sort of like stress response. You know, stress happens in your body. And we all know how counterproductive stress is. And so and then the best thing you can do is go, oh, it'll come to me later. And you go and you do something like make a cup of tea and you're just stirring your tea. You go, that's the name. Because you're doing something that you're flowing at. And so, the work that I offer uses stories, uses songs, uses shreds and patches of traditional material to put people into that flow. If somebody wants to sing Happy Birthday, I'll sing it 1,000,000 times with them. Yeah. That's the job,
So how do people access what it is you provide? How do they know about you?
I know, it's funny, isn't it? Well, I do have a website, but mostly my work has found me by word of mouth. And even in this transition time, I've got people who know what I do. And so they're saying, Sally, we've got to be able to use you in some way, And so, I'm a creative, flexible worker, and I'm really blessed to have a network of flexible, creative librarians, arts managers within hospital trusts, promoters, a friend. I was due to go and run a course in Ireland in May, and obviously I couldn't travel there. And my friend said, well, run the course on Zoom. And I said, oh, my goodness. My friend Liz is a big promoter of storytelling in Ireland. And I said, Liz, I don't know if I can, because my course was going to be on sensory storytelling, all around using kind of fabrics and sounds and smells and textures and kind of motion senses and kind of vestibular senses and proprioceptions, exploring the 7 senses to tell stories. And I thought, how can I do this on Zoom? How can I? But I did, and my creative friend pushed me, and thanks to her, 10 people did the course and enjoyed it, and have gone on to be really creative sharers of stories who can now share stories for people who maybe wouldn't engage with the words, but they would really love the flow of a story. I often say that my work is about bathing people's ears in the music of language. And I can tell a story that is just like and there's the music of language there, and it's called property, and it's an incredible thing, and it's how babies learn to speak. My grandson babbles and learns and they talk that babble talk, but it's such important talk. It's the building blocks of language and expressive talk. And equally, it's the music, it's the sound that's the last thing to go as our senses fade away and we're ready for death. And so we can still bathe people's ears in the music of language, and stories, songs, rhymes, taradiddles are the way to do it.
Wow. You've said that's
amazing. That is fascinating.
I was going to say, because obviously Shane, obviously your sister's a librarian anyway, isn't she?
Yes, she is, And she does storytelling as well. And she's my sister's very, very good at the whole storytelling thing. She's got a lot of self-control, and she's always been passionate about books and stories and whatnot, and far more in depth than I ever did. I was never a book kind of person. I've read more in my sort of mid-20s than I have in my entire life. And but she has always had a book in her hand growing up. Like, she just always did, and that has then progressed her into this amazing career that she's got, and she's absolutely loving it, and she's doing really, really well. And she does a lot of work with kids, and does a lot of storytelling and workshops and things like that. And some of the work she does is absolutely amazing. I'm pretty sure she does a little bit to do with people with dementia and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've always found, I mean, it's sort of a slightly side note. I mean, it was one of the sort of side shows I wanted to start with the Biscuit, which Memoirs of the Salopian. And it's something that I've thought up of, which is basically sitting down with somebody over a certain age and just literally sitting there and just letting them talk. Because I personally find those stories of what once was kind of thing, these little snippets of memories, like you said, and I remember this one time in the pub once, this happened, and I can remember when this happened, down Mardle, that stuff. I find that stuff fascinating. Whereas I sort of suddenly got aware that when you are brought up with that person, they constantly tell these stories, you kind of get a little bit complacent with it until it's gone. And once it's gone forever. Mm-hmm. Like, you're never going to get that back. And I think that actually it's quite, fair dues to you, because the work that you're doing, even if they can't necessarily communicate it across to you, you're probably firing off memories from nowhere that they probably never even thought that was even there before, just by using music and stuff. And they're connecting that with a memory that they've had since, from a childhood. And
absolutely,
all these stuff's gone flooding back.
Definitely. There's an old African proverb that says, when a person dies, a library disappears with them.
Oh,
yes.
And that's exactly what you've just said. And one of the nicest things we can do is sit and listen to somebody. Now, some people, you will say, oh, tell us a story. And they'll go, oh, I don't know any stories. Oh, don't ask me. I don't know any stories. But if you said to them, do you remember that time when the floods used to come into Shrewsbury? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days, yeah.
So you have to ask those leading questions.
That's it.
And ask enough of them, and you ask them without ego. And sometimes you don't ask a question. You sing something like, we're all going on a summer holiday, and people will just start telling you stories because you're putting people into that flow.
Yep.
And I often say that as a storyteller, this might come as a shock to you, but one of the biggest jobs that I do is sit and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Go on, sorry, Shane.
I can remember as a kid, I must have been only about 15, something like that. If not even that old, I don't think. I was old enough just about to go into town on my own, on the bus, something, And I can remember waiting in the bus station for to go home, to catch the bus home, and this old chap just kind of sits next to me, and I'm not even joking. I ended up sitting there for about 2.5 hours with this bloke, just sat there, just talking to him, and I was fascinated. This bloke was like ex-military, he'd done all this stuff in his life, and he just sat there and just started telling me all this stuff. I think that's probably where the hook come, and that's why I got so fascinated with it, because I was just absolutely you wouldn't have guessed that this bloke, this old guy that's from a kid's perspective kind
mature,
of thing,
mature Shane,
he was
old.
just
this old guy.
he was just like hunched over, and he was wrinkled, and he just looked so innocent, and and I found out that he had this amazing life, and he'd done all this stuff with the army, and he'd been abroad, and he fought all sorts of different things, and he'd done all these things, and I was just absolutely gobsmacked. And I think that's where the hook comes from, because I would sit with old people for hours, and I'd just talk to them, just listen, and I find them absolutely amazing. absolutely amazing.
And what we also really need to know is that, we will be those old people for the younger generation, telling them the story of this time,
Tell them all about COVID-19.
Absolutely.
Yeah, oh my God, there'll be stories coming out there.
And we will remember the time before, and we will tell them. And I'm getting ready to tell my grandson, because he won't remember a time before this. So whatever new normal is rolling out, we are the witnesses, and we will be able to tell the story before. Shane, I want to tell you an amazing thing that happened to me. This was a gig that I did years ago, and it was in a little backstreet club for the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for the Blind, and they used to run tea clubs. And I got a job touring these little tea clubs all over the country, and I would do a little kind of piece of storytelling for blind people. And I did this one job, and it was in the back streets of Warrington. And I phoned up before to arrange it all with the organiser. He said, "Right, love, what time you coming?" I said, "Well, to fit in with you." And he said, "Well, whatever time you start, love, you've got to be finished by 2:45. I said, 2:45? Why? I mean, it's a bit of an unusual time. Normally it's 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And I was going, what happens at 2:45? "Oh, well, that's when they bring the pies in." I said, "Pie?" He said, "We're sponsored by a baker's, so the baker sends the pies in at 2:45, and I tell you what, they smell lovely. And once them pies come in, you'll not be heard, love." I said, "Right, okay, I'm a professional. I will do you the job. I'll finish at 2:45. So I did my thing. 2:44 and 49 seconds, I strummed the last chord on my guitar. "Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen." And the door at the back of the room opens, and in comes this tray of steaming hot pies, and the aroma is insane. And everyone is just sort of like, "Oh, pies. And, I wasn't going to turn down a sweet-smelling pie. So I sat down. I was sat next to this little old lady, a little bit like your man in the bus station, Shane.
Yeah.
Little old lady, completely blind, and she was tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. And together, hunched over, we tucked into a nice hot meat pie together. And I said, "What's your name?" And she said, I'm called Sunny Lowry." I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Cool, that's a really unusual name." And then I thought, gosh, I'm here near Manchester, and there's this woman, Lowry. So I said, "You wouldn't by any chance be related to the painter Lowry, Matchstick Men and Matchstick Cats and Dogs, And she went, "Oh, yeah. Lawrence was my cousin. Yeah. Yeah." And I went, "Oh, wow. I mean, I think everybody must know L.S. Lowry's paintings." Yeah. Wow,
yeah.
Who would have thought I was going to meet you in the back streets of Warrington? This is amazing.
Over a pie.
And she said, "Yeah, Lawrence did all right for himself, but I put Manchester on the map." I said, "Did you? What did you do?"
Well, literally.
Yeah. And she said, "Yes, I was the first woman to ever swim the British Channel." And I said, "Really?" And she was. And this little old lady, who, just like your man in the bus station, Shane, little tiny, tiny, tiny lady, completely blind. She had trained on the Dee estuary, coated in goose grease, in a knitted bikini, and she had swum the British Channel, and she was the first woman to ever do it. And she said, "And I was doing it, and I was coming into Calais," and she was miming out the front crawl. She said, "I was coming into Calais, and I could see the lights of Calais, and I was just coming into Calais, and they stepped into the water, and they offered me a hand, and I took a hand, and I was helped out of the water," and she was disqualified. So she swam the British Channel. She was disqualified, so she had to do it again, and she did. And she holds the record for the first woman to ever swim the British Channel, and her name was Sunny Lowry. There she is.
Is that her, yeah?
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought Sunny Lowry. Wow.
And she was there in the back streets of Warrington eating a meat pie at an RNIB afternoon tea club. So if that's not the value of sitting with somebody and letting them tell you their story, so that now I can tell it to you. And I have to tell you that I read Sunny Lowry's obituary in The Guardian many, many years ago, and she's no longer with her. But I feel really proud that whilst Sunny's body may have gone, her story and her legacy and her magic lives on, and she's alive with us today. And we can keep people alive by telling their stories.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
That's amazing.
That's all of our work. And, you know, as a professional storyteller, that is my job, to inspire us to do exactly what you're talking about, Shane, you know, and give this stuff value, whatever platform we're sharing on.
Yeah. And we was talking about this as a group the other day, just on WhatsApp, because Shane had come up with the idea about let's do some storytelling on the biscuit. But obviously we got into a sort of conversation around sort of copyright and is it legal to sort of like transcript that information. So what's your sort of knowledge about how that does work, Sal?
Well, no, you can't use somebody else's material. It's copywritten and intellectual property and all of that. But as storytellers, we're dealing with a whole repertoire of traditional material, which are fully rounded stories. So the Three Bears, Little Red Riding Hood, the Three Billy Goats Gruff, the Enormous Turnip, the Magic Porridge Pot. All of these stories, they're traditional stories. Nursery rhymes, traditional material. You know, songs are traditional songs. The one song that I love to do with groups is there were rats as big as blooming cats in the stores. There were rats as big as blooming cats in the quartermaster's doors.
Wow.
Yeah, and that everybody going, now that traditional song, it's a campfire song, you know. And so this is the stuff, and you start it, and then people go ping, their eyes light up, and they start to flow, and the pressure to remember is removed, and you're granted permission to play. And so this is kind of, you know, this is the territory that I inhabit. Now, of course, you tell a story, you tell a traditional story, and I tell a lot of stories about the devil. I live under the devil's chair here in Sniperstones. And so you tell a lot of stories about the devil. And, you know, storytellers have a code of honor in that, you know, somebody might tell a traditional tale about the devil, but you wouldn't tell it verbatim because that's their telling. You know, your details, your little narratives, your twists and your turns, your turn of phrase, your little sort of watermarks that go through that story, they're yours. And there's a code of honor between storytellers that you don't plagiarize off each other. But at its core, the repertoire is traditional, just like how many people sing Danny Boy. Do you know what I mean? And it's a different arrangement of a folk song. So it's exactly the same thing. You just instrument it, you orchestrate it differently. And I'm fascinated by, you know, little things. If I said to you, a bird in a hand is worth
two in the bush.
Yeah. A stitch in time
saves nine.
Never cast a clout before.
Oh, don't know that one. Don't know that one.
But, you know, we're in all those little things, all those bits of phrases, proverbs, sayings. They're the things that sort of mesh us together. You know, we're held together by this sort of common sort of parlance, really, this common language, this repertoire that we share, and that as soon as you sort of access it, people relax. They go, yeah, I know this. This is my stuff. I know it.
Yeah.
And we started it at school. Yeah. And it's a very important job of schools. And there are some really brilliant schools in Shropshire that hire me religiously to go in once a term and bathe those children's ears in the music of language, as well as the teachers and the TAs. Yeah. You know, so we all know that stuff.
Yeah.
And
you know, there's still songs from like my school that I still remember now. Yeah, I probably won't remember all of it, but if I heard it, I go, I remember that. You know, and it's like it's accessing a different part of the memory, I suppose, isn't it? And like you said, it's linking up the sounds and the words to different memories. So, like me personally, I'm ridiculously good at watching a film and being able to tell you what other film that actor's been in. Now, I wasn't lying when I said that it's like me with my kids' birthdays. I genuinely struggle, some 9 out of 10, to off the bat remember my kids' birthdays. I have to sit there and properly think about it and work it out. And like, hold on, which one was first? Like, I have to really think about it, and it's like an effort. And things like that, I really struggle with. And luckily, my girlfriend, she's really good at remembering that sort of stuff. So between the two of us, we kind of fit in quite well. But if it comes to something visual, if it's a place, if it's in a film, if it's a bit of music or something, I can go, I know what that is. But if it's writing, if it's written, forget it. I'm not going to remember it. Everybody's different.
Styles, we're all different, and it sounds like that you and your partner are a good complement.
Yeah.
She's a good girl.
Have you heard that right? Jack's brat could eat no fat and his wife could eat no lean. So between them both, you see, they lick the platter clean.
Yeah, pretty much. I know it's really funny, actually. My dad calls me Jack.
You know what?
Shropshire's Jack's brat.
Millions of stories of Jack. There are millions of stories of Jack. We've got Jack and the Beanstalk. But if you think about Jack, there's millions and millions of stories. There's the house that Jack built. Jack and Jill went up the hill. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Jack jump over the candlestick.
I do get about you.
Pardon? You do get about, yeah.
I do get about, yeah.
What about that game that you throw with the ball and you catch?
Jacks.
Yeah,
Jack Straws. We've got Jack Straws, Jack Canori, tell a story.
Wow.
Jack is every man. I've got about 20 stories of Jack. There's loads and loads and loads of stories about Jack the journeyman, Jack the traveller, Jack the everyman. And, that's just sort of part of the repertoire that a storyteller carries around in their head.
And there's Jack Reacher, of course, Everyone just put a Jack Reacher.
Random. But Louis.
No, that was a nod to me.
Jack
that was. Or not, as the case may be, Al.
It is an in joke. It's an old joke, that one. That was my rant about Tom Cruise not being Jack Reacher because he's about 4 foot.
I agree with you on that, 100%. I mean, he was good, but he's not the vision that you get it's not the vision you have of who Jack Reacher should be when you read about him in the stories.
He's meant to be 6'2" military guy, not a 4 foot midget.
Jules, don't get him back on his soapbox because it's 7:45. And
what you're talking about is really interesting because I'm really funny this. I'm really inspired by an American storyteller and writer who is called Jack Zipes. Okay, he's a professor of storytelling, Jack Zipes. And Jack Zipes talks about stories, and he says stories are a really true place for a revolution because how you imagine a story. If I said to you there was a cottage in a woods, right? Mm-hmm. Jules, Shane and Alex, you are all imagining a slightly different cottage, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a picture of a cottage in the woods in your mind now. And everything in our world is so mediated to us and fed to us, and sort of images are given to us of what we should be seeing and what we should be thinking. Whereas when we're dealing with sort of little archetypes of cottages in woods or monsters under beds or beautiful princesses in castles or kind of fearsome knights hacking their way through tangled ivy forests, we imagine those in our minds, in our dreamscapes, in our truly private place. And stories are the last free place that we have to go. Everywhere else we're told what to think, but when somebody offers you a story and they just tell it you, and you make that offer to children. Once upon a time there was a cottage and it was right in the middle of a dark woods, and in that cottage there lived a little old lady and she hadn't seen anybody for 10 years. Instantly you've constructed a picture in your mind. If you could paint it, if you could make a film of it, Shane, everybody would produce something different.
Yeah.
And stories are the last free place. And it feels so important when I'm going into schools and offering children a pathway into that last free place in their imaginations, the last free place where they can dream up.
Yeah, I completely get that. Again, sort of alluding back to my work. I mean, I've a lot of the people I deal with on a day-to-day basis, I've never actually met face to face. Especially now, actually, because I've just had some more people in my remit. So twice a year we have like a big meeting. And eventually I'll get to see somebody face to face that I've been talking to for the last 6 months on the phone daily, and then all of a sudden the picture the person that stood in front of me is completely different to the person that I had created in my head. And then sometimes I walk up to them and they go, "You're right," and I'm like, "Who are you?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm Rich." I'm like, "Oh, you're rich." Like, I thought you were about 5 foot and about that wide. Like, it's like, why am I looking up to you? I'm 6'1". Why am I looking up to you? You're about 5 foot at best. Like, that's what you sound like.
Is this where I admit about what happened 2 weeks ago with the dog aid situation, Julie?
You can.
We invite Julie was like, "Oh, we got Rachel from Dog Aid coming in." I don't know why, but I expected a more mature lady, an older lady, but Rachel came on. She's a very young, striking looking woman, and it threw me off. I was kind of like, "Oh, hi." It was just weird. I don't know why I imagined an older person, but when Rachel come on, I was like, "Oh, hi. Yeah. Okay.
It's because it was a charity, wasn't it? And it was linked to, people sort of like training normal dogs to become therapy dogs. So
it's interesting.
You have a perception.
It's interesting how we do kind of create a stereotype based on very little information. No matter how much we try and keep an open mind about anything, we can't help but to instantly have a stereotypical image in your head. About how somebody looks, how somebody, how they behave, what likes, dislikes are, and you've already built this character in your head just based on like 1 or 2 different facts. And everybody does it. Everybody does it. You can be the most open-minded, non-prejudiced person in the world. You get someone called Mackenzie, you're going to have an image in your head.
It's the important work of the storyteller, and I feel really strongly, and I know that our time is running out, but I could talk to you a lot about that old woman in the cottage. Why is a woman living on her own very likely in a story to be a witch? It's kind of interesting how we've othered older women and how we've othered unmarried women in our stories, and how there's a lot of socioeconomic reasons for the spinster and for the witch, and the way that character has been constructed and maligned. And I was really lucky to work with the folklorist called Anne-Marie Legram, who you really should have on here, because she's running a wonderful season at the moment where she's commissioning a lot of artists, including me, to make content for a Facebook page called Folk. And she's done a lot of thinking around witches. And I was really lucky as a storyteller to work with her. She's a painter, and just exploring, as you say, this woman's going to come and show us about dogs, and like you construct this picture, and it's based on every other woman with dogs that you've thought about, and all the messages that society has given us. And this is where stories are just really, really interesting to have an awareness around, that we're always telling ourselves stories. And right now we're being told a huge story around around the corona stuff, and how it's being handled, and stories of heroism, and this is the way that our society makes sense of itself.
So
that's it, Alex. It's a brilliant link, and I've got some content on there already, and I'm posting some more up next week.
I think it might be different and a bit interesting for us if we potentially we'll have a chat about seeing how we can work, but I wonder if it might be worth having you on, Sal, and actually doing a story.
That'd be good. We can get that sorted.
I think that would be quite good. Sort of share with us and your audience. No, share with us and the audience, and we'll set it up for a different time with the sort of stuff you do. But in the meantime, if people want to find you, and link into you, particularly now as well with everything going on. What is your website called so people can find you?
It's called Sally Tonge, www.sallytonge.co.uk. It just does what it says on the tin. And
Brilliant.
you find
and
me.
the spelling of Tonge?
Tonge.
Lovely.
Yeah, like the village near Shifnal with an E on the end.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. The one that's, wasn't it 2000 AD? Yeah.
It's a handy name for a storyteller to be called Sally Tonge. It's a very handy name.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Sal, you've been an absolute star. I'm just aware of the time because I know you guys want to get to the NHS clap, as do I.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely amazing. Your work is incredible, and I can't wait. I'm personally going to have a look and see if I can find some stuff that your work and have a ganders. So yeah. Thank you for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thank you for
Sorry, I was
me.
a little bit late. I had a few tech issues, and thanks to Jules for co-hosting with me.
Pleasure.
And thank you for Al for being lovely and quiet, as for a change. It doesn't happen very often. He's behaved himself today, I think. I think he can have a cookie. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. This has been the Shrewsbury Biscuit. Al, do you want to plug all the social medias because you know all the links? I don't.
I was like pretending to type on this. I was like, website. Don't forget the website. Make sure you guys check us out at www.theshrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk, and our website is made by our friends at Web Orchard. Make sure you check us out.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Peace out.